a great division nonetheless. I just think that just the way it was designed, and just the way they added the comedy into it and whatnot. I just think it just made it so it didn't work. But I still enjoy the knockouts nonetheless. But getting into this Knockouts Championship match, I was really looking forward to this match because Deonna Purrazzo should make her debut following when Jordynne Grace had defeated Taya Valkyrie in the Knockouts title match, and then she'd put her in the Fujiwara armbar, and then she'd take the belt, and then she would raise it up and signaling that she wanted to challenge for the Knockouts Championship. So she did have one match on Impact. It was against Alicia Edwards. That was her debut, and I guess she'd have another match against Alicia. That was on Explosion. But going into this, I was really looking forward to it. I really like Jordynne Grace as well. I'm a fan of both of these women. I think they're both really good talents. I think Jordynne Grace is also like one of the best women's wrestlers out there right now. And I think Deonna Purrazzo, she's said that she's the best technical women's wrestler out there. And honestly, in a lot of ways, can agree with that because she's just got a lot of good holds. She's really good at grappling, got good submissions. I mean, she's a very, very fluent offense. Also, like she's just very, very smooth, very crisp offense that she possesses. So throughout the match, she would look to put Jordynne Grace in the Fujiwara armbar, but then she'd find a way to prevent it. And then Jordynne Grace would look to hit the Grace driver a few times, but then eventually she would hit it, and then she would actually, Deonna Purrazzo, kick out of that, which that's a very rare sight of seeing anyone kick out of the Grace driver, because basically everyone she's gone against before in the past that I could recall hadn't. So at that point, I kind of got the feeling that Deonna was going to win. But then toward the end, Deonna would she'd nearly get the win with the jackknife cover, but then she'd turn around and then she'd get not one but both arms, and she'd bend them back. And I'm trying to think of what you call this submission, because it's like, I guess it's like a double arm bar, but basically like she just had both arms just bent all the way back. It was a really great submission. And then Jordynne Grace wouldn't be able to tap out, so she'd have to verbally submit. And then, Deonna Purrazzo would become your new Knockouts champion. So that was the goal. She was, once she got out of NXT and once she got to Impact, her goal was to become Knockouts champion, and she was able to do so here on this night. I mean, once again, there's always that stigma of how, as I pointed out even earlier, that like, you get these talents that will come into TNA of the past or Impact nowadays, or at least Impact of the past, whatever you want to call it, and they come right in there and win the title or you get the push and whatnot. But I didn't mind it in this case because I really like Deonna Purrazzo, and I just think she's just a great talent. I think in this case, it only makes sense. I kind of got that feeling going into it that she would actually be the one to beat Jordynne Grace, just because there's other knockouts in the division. Like I could have seen maybe if they would have done it right, Kiera Hogan could have gone against her and maybe have done it. I mean, she's in the tag team with Tasha, but I guess that's somebody who they could have done it with. And I guess now that Deonna is Knockouts champion and Kylie Ray's number one contender, that's going to be the next program to go with Kylie Ray and Deonna Purrazzo for the Knockouts title. But I'm really looking forward to that one, so I think it's going to be great. But I thought it was a pretty damn good match regardless, and I went ahead and gave this one 3 3/4. I just thought it was a really, really good match, and 15 minutes, 11 seconds was the allotted time given to it. Very happy for Deonna Purrazzo becoming Knockouts champion. In NXT, she never really got utilized to her full potential. I always felt that she could have been like the future of the NXT women's division. I thought she could have been just a really good talent for WWE just going forward down the road, but they just never really utilized her to her full potential. So I'm happy that she's found a place in Impact Wrestling, and she's the Knockouts champion, so very happy for her. So then following that, while she was basically celebrating with the championship, they just immediately just cut away, and I thought that was kind of strange, like they just immediately just cut away from her with the title, so I thought that was kind of strange. But they wouldn't, however, Don Callis and Josh Matthews announced Bound for Glory, their biggest event of the year, their biggest pay-per-view of the year. It will take place on Saturday, October 24th. They didn't announce a location or a venue or anything, but, granted in October, I don't think things are, with the way they're looking right now, I don't think they're going to be, spectacular or anything. Or, I don't think you could expect much at that point. I mean, I think we'll still be in the situation we're dealing right now with COVID-19 and everything. I mean, granted, who knows, how much better or how much worse it could be, but it'll still be obviously a thing at that point in time. So I wouldn't expect, them to announce anything or a location and whatnot, but they might just do it out of the Skyway Studios in Nashville, like they've been doing everything else, like they did Slammiversary and all the tapings out of it. Which, I mean, hey, WWE did the WrestleMania out of the Performance Center this year, so I mean, I guess you can do your biggest show out of just a close set and out of because AEW did Double or Nothing out of Daly's place too. So I mean, not that that's their biggest pay-per-view. I mean, I guess in this time, if you're just going to continue to do professional wrestling shows, you just got to be able to find a way to do it. And I guess that's probably how they're going to end up doing this one. But I can't say. We'll see where we are October 24th. But it is once again Saturday, October 24th. So this pay-per-view is on a Saturday, and that was kind of a different deal for Impact, because usually WWE, they've done and I guess Sundays is just a lot of time just been a traditional pay-per-view night for wrestling. But AEW's adopted doing the Saturday pay-per-view format, so I guess Impact's going to do the same as well. I guess Impact's maybe going to just go forward with doing Saturday pay-per-views, at least during this time. I guess maybe they like it or whatever. Maybe they could try to turn Saturdays into their own thing. I mean, AEW already does it, but I don't know. I mean, in this case, you had the Saturday night pay-per-view with Impact, and then the Sunday night, you got the WWE pay-per-view. So, I mean, if you're a pro wrestling fan, I mean, that turns out to be great for us, because, you get just you just get a weekend of wrestling pay-per-views. So that works out great for everybody. But after that was announced, we would be on to the main event of the evening. It would be the four-way elimination match. They only announced it as a four-way match, but it would turn out that it would be an elimination match as well for the vacant Impact World Championship. As noted, the Impact World title was vacant, and the previous champion was Tessa Blanchard, but then there's that whole situation, so they'd remove her as champion and terminate her contract, so she'd be gone from Impact. So it would be Ace Austin and Madman Fulton would be in his corner versus Trey Miguel, versus Eddie Edwards versus a mystery opponent. So a lot of intrigue going into this one. Of course, Ace Austin, I think, is another really, really good talent. He doesn't get the credit that he deserves. Trey Miguel, another great young talent. I think it really I think what's also great is just seeing how Impact has these two young talents in Ace and Trey. They're both so young. Ace is 23. I forgot how young Trey is, but I mean, here they are, and these are two guys who weren't even promoted on the card last year. Ace Austin wasn't on the Slammiversary card. Trey wasn't going into it, but then I remember the day of they added a four-way to open the show, and then he was in that. But so yeah, this is just what a difference a year makes, and it's just the future of Impact. They got a lot of they even got a lot of youth in this company. I mean, they got a lot of good veterans in here as well, but I mean, still, I mean, I think the future in Impact is bright. But then you have Eddie Edwards, who is really the heart and soul of that company right now. There's been guys who've, I guess they've returned, you got the Machine Guns, and you got other people who they're returning Impact, which I'm going to get into in a little bit, but you got them returning, but the one constant since he had come in as part of the Wolves back in 2014 has been Eddie Edwards. I think in a lot of ways now he's maybe even the best worker in that company, just because he never has a bad match. He gives everything he has, whether it's everything they've thrown at him, whether it was a couple years ago with creative, and it changed his character, and he started to do that insane lunatic type loose cannon kind of Eddie Edwards character. He had Kenny, the kendo stick, just all these changes he's made, he's adapted to that, and he's done well with it. And then now he's kind of gone back to, I think now, he's starting to go back to that diehard Eddie Edwards kind of character a bit more. But even then, like, he's been able to change, and everything Impact's given him, he's basically taken it and he just made it work. So I think he's just an absolute great talent. And Eddie Edwards, I think, is probably like my favorite wrestler at Impact for sure. So I was very happy to see him back in this spot. And this is actually, believe it or not, Eddie Edwards' first ever pay-per-view main event ever in Impact. So this is definitely a spot that he's more than deserving of having. And originally, keep in mind, this was, as I said earlier, supposed to be a 5-way match. It was supposed to be Ace Austin versus Trey versus Eddie Edwards versus Michael Elgin and Tessa Blanchard. But then it become a 4-way with the mystery opponent. But getting into the match, they'd all make their entrances. But then the music would stop, and then all of a sudden Rich Swann's music would play, which was interesting because earlier in the night when he was doing the interview with GM Miller, he was on crutches. So then he'd come out in his ring gear, he'd have the crutches, and then he'd toss the crutches away. And I guess, yeah, he would be cleared and he'd be back in action for the first time since January of this year. So it's great to see Rich Swann back. He is another tremendous talent. He is so good in the ring. He's so charismatic. I think he's just a star as a whole. And he's in last year, I mean, that guy had been another one of like Impact's like at least top 5 wrestlers. So it's great to see him back. Although at the time, I'm not gonna lie, I don't want to say I was disappointed because I was happy to see Rich Swann and like I really enjoy his work, but I was expecting just somebody else. I'm not gonna lie. But then right before the bell gets sounded, we'd have this 4-way matchup. All of a sudden, some music would hit, and it would be unknown who it was at the time, but then all of a sudden, none other than Eric Young would appear. Eric Young would make his return to Impact Wrestling for the first time in years. I think it's been like at least 4 years, but it feels way longer than that because, of course, Eric Young, he'd had his run with WWE as well. He was, he had Sanity, and, they were tag team champions, and I guess that worked, for NXT. I mean, it wasn't one of my favorite things he had ever done in his career, but I mean, I guess it worked. At least there was a spot for him. But then they got called up to SmackDown, and then nothing really went from there. And basically every other member of Sanity ended up going farther than he did. So, that was kind of unfortunate. And then WWE, he just never got a push. He was never really featured on television at all. So seeing him back here in Impact was great, and it was really awesome to see. So then he would announce that this match was now a 5-way instead of a 4-way. Which, as I just said, keep in mind, it was originally supposed to be a 5-way. So, I mean, the lead up to this whole thing may have been a bit confusing, but I will say this match absolutely delivered. It was a hell of a 5-way matchup. So then to start the match, Rich Swann would go right after Eric Young, and then Trey and Ace Austin would go after one another, which Trey would say in his promo and leading up to this in the video package that the second that bell rings, he's the first guy he's coming for. So that's good that they followed through with that, and then there'd be a lot of good spots in this. I remember there was the one part where Trey got sent to the outside of the ring, and then as he was sliding out of the ring, he'd hit like a Canadian destroyer on Rich Swann on the floor. I mean, that was a brutal spot for Rich Swann to take, but I mean, especially coming off an injury. I mean, God, he's going head first. Get the other mats. Those mats don't really give with that concrete because those are really thin mats. So, that was a crazy spot. For me, that may have actually been the spot of the match. But then the first elimination would come when Eric Young would nail Trey with a spike pile driver. And I'm not going to lie, it was a really damn good spike pile driver. It's almost like Eric Young was waiting to hit that thing for like years because in WWE the pile driver is like an outlawed move, so you can't hit it there. But he hit a really good pile driver on Trey, then he'd pin him and he'd be the first out. And then Rich Swann and Eric Young, they go at each other. I remember there was one point where Ace Austin and Eddie Edwards were on the top, and then Eric Young, he would pick up Rich Swann, and then he'd send him into Ace Austin and Eddie. I think he powerbombed him into him. Yeah, I think he powerbombed Rich Swann into Ace and Eddie, and then they'd crash through a table on the outside, the timekeeper's table. So then from there, it would be Eric Young and then Rich Swann in the ring. And then Rich Swann would roll up Eric Young and he'd eliminate him. Then Eric Young would be very pissed off by that. And then Eric Young would then start to attack Rich Swann. He'd grab a chair on the outside